What's going on, guys? It's ODB, and I'm here to give you some tips on Hi-Capa maintenance. When I do maintenance on my guns, I actually do two different versions of them. One, I do a very quick, right before I go out to play kind of maintenance, just to make sure that I have everything tech savved up. And the other kind of maintenance I do more of a bi-weekly, where I take apart my entire gun and just make sure everything's running smooth, nothing's broken, and just making sure everything is still intact. It's important to make sure that your gun is running smoothly, as well as lessening the wear and tear on your gun to make sure that they can last as long as possible. So today, I'll be showing you my quick version of the maintenance on my Pink Nasty, and for the bi-weekly maintenance, I'm going to be showing you that on the War Daddy. For the cleaning part of my maintenance, I use paper towels and a whole lot of Q-tips. Tech Salve. I use it on all my guns. I know a lot of other people use silicone oil or gun oil, but I'm gonna stand by Tech Salve. It's done me right every time with every gun, so I use Tech Salve in order to lube up anything or any part with a contact. For breaking down the guns, I have a random assortment of Allen keys as well as a micro set, which you can see here. All right, so to start the maintenance off, the first thing I'm gonna do is take off the slide. Push that back, take out the slide catch right over there. All right, put that to the side. Now I got my slide off. You can see the old lube that I've used is kind of just gunked up. Usually it's pink and now it's like a really dirty doo-doo brown, and that's not good. So we want to make sure we clean that up. So look, that's the first wipe. The Tech Salve is essentially this kind of pink, and that's really not pink. So just keep cleaning it up. And there's a couple of, creases that I can't get with the paper towel. So that's why I do have the Q-tips on deck. So now after I've gotten as much gunk off with the paper towel, I'm gonna go in with the Q-tip, give it a nice couple swabs here and there. I really don't go too in depth as far as taking apart the lower receiver. I don't really see the need to. I think the trigger group is really fine and doesn't get as dirty as most parts, so I usually leave that. But you can see after I did the cleaning with the Q-tip and the paper towel, it's much cleaner, no more of that brown gunk anywhere. What you will have to look out for is just like the little trails of threads that the paper towel and Q-tip leave. So for that, you can really just use your hand and pick it out. It's really not that hard, but again, you can see it's much, much cleaner than it was when we started. So the first thing you want to do when you're maintaining the slide setup is taking off the guide rod setup. The first thing I see a lot of people having issues with is taking off that guide rod setup. So an easy way to do it is actually putting your nail a little bit on the front part of the guide rod plug, giving you that little bit of play right there to insert another nail and then drag it down. See that? Then you want to push up just a little bit and move it slightly to your right. And then it comes out very, very smoothly. I have a 140 recoil spring on this guide rod setup, so it is a little tough. You do want to be careful. You don't want that thing to shoot out. So just make sure you're holding it as tightly as possible, because I have seen people maintaining their guns and the recoil spring just boom, shooting this thing across the room. And just to avoid that, make sure you've got a good grip on it. If you do have smaller hands or weaker hands, just make sure you try to have somebody help you out. So now after that's done, you can also take out the barrel setup with the hop up. And again, I'm not gonna go too in depth into this because this one is my quick maintenance that I usually do before games. But as you can see, there's still a lot of gunk everywhere. So again, I'm going to take the paper towel and just clean up as much as I can. You'll see where it does get dirty. It does have, you know, just certain marks and smudges. You can see the paper towel. It is getting dirtier by the second as I'm wiping this thing down. Also, just, you know, it is metal to metal contact, so there are going to be little shavings here and there. Just want to make sure you're cleaning all of that out. So that's looking pretty clean for now. I'm going to continue using this paper towel just to wipe down the other setups that I have here. So you see I've got the barrel set up, a lot of gunk around there as well. Just make sure you give it a nice little wipe down. And I'm also taking off all of the short stroke kits and wiping down the guide rod itself. I do lube this up when I'm, you know, doing my maintenance. So this is one of the things I wanted to show you guys. Again, this is, I believe it's Cow. It's one of those guide rods that have like an already short stroke kind of kit. So now I'm just gonna go a little bit deeper into the cleaning with the Q-tip now that I'm done with the paper towel. And you wanna get into the rail of where it makes the contact with the lower frame. So that little space right there. So you wanna make sure you're using the Q-tip to get into this little rail right here, which is what connects with the lower frame. And you can see on the Q-tip, although I've already wiped it down with the paper towel just to get most of the gunk off, there's still a lot of excess in there. So you want to make sure you do get into that rail as much as you possibly can. So now that we've got the cleaning done, I'm gonna bust open the tech salve and make sure we're just putting a little bit on any point of contact just so that things run a little bit smoother. So for me, the first thing that I lube up is those rails that I was just recently cleaning. And take a little bit of tech salve, nothing crazy. You can always reapply more, but you always just don't want to be wasteful and you don't want it to go anywhere. You want to be very concise with where you're placing it. So at first, I'm literally just gonna run down that same rail that I was just cleaning. And you'll still notice that there is gonna be dirt coming on the Q-tip, but that's okay. At least you got most of the gunk off. And then we're just applying it there. And see, that's a perfect example of the threads that I was saying you gotta be careful about. Don't want that in your gun when you're playing. I usually don't apply more tech salve. What I do is just use whatever excess I have on the Q-tip and just put a little base layer on the nozzle itself. So the slide is done being lubricated. Now I'm gonna move towards the next part that's going in, which is going to be the outer barrel and inner barrel setup. Honestly, for this, I don't lube anything just because it doesn't really move. So I just put that back together and then put that back into the slide setup. For the guide rod setup, I don't use a Q-tip for this just because I feel like it's a little easier to just use my hand. So I just put a little bit on my finger, put it on the guide rod plug itself, and then just kind of twist it in a circular motion. And then you can kind of grip it to get all the excess off. And then with that same tech salve, what I do is I put it on the guide rod. And then I'm putting the washers back on. Also, if you don't know, you always want to make sure you have a washer in between your short stroke kit and the spring. It will just help as far as wear and tear. If not, the spring is gonna dig really deep into the short stroke kit and eventually it's gonna create warpage. I'm gonna touch more on it as when I go into the deeper maintenance, but I just wanted to make that clear to everyone who also uses short stroke kits. So now that I have this here, I'm gonna put the spring back on, as well as the guide plug, and just compress it. Again, make sure you've got a good grip on this. I did just put a whole bunch of tech salve on it, so if it shoots out, it's going across the room. So now that I have it compressed, I want to go in from the right side of it, get right past the hop-up unit, make sure your guide rod plug is in line. Once it shoots in, should be good to move that, and then everything should click right into place. And there you see, nice setup, cleaned and lubed. Now I'm gonna move on to lubing up the lower part. So this right here, you're really just making sure you're lubing up the same parts that you cleaned up earlier. So just a little bit of light lube on the top of the trigger group, as well as on the sides where it makes contact with the rail. I also put some right here. You can see the scratches. And I just think putting a light amount of tech salve there just helps the contact go a little bit smoother. So let's start with that. I'm gonna take a Q-tip, put a decent amount of tech salve on it, nothing crazy. And then what I like to do is just put a little dot on everything that I'm gonna tech salve up, just to give it like a light layer so that I'm not wasting everything on one side. And then just give it a nice little quick swab. Okay, and then again, you see the ridges right there. Just want to make sure you hit that up. I know there's no movement for the hop up when the gun is in use, but I do like to put a light layer right on the bottom where the hop up sits, just so that it goes into the gun much smoother than normal. So now that the gun is fully lubed up and cleaned, we can put it back together. Take your slide right here. Okay, put that down. Get that perfect. Also, if you have a hard time, you can always hold it from the opening right here where the shell ejection would be, and then it just gives you an easier time to put the slide catch right in there. Now what I like to do at this point is make sure there's no crazy wobble, give it a few racks. See, it's moving smooth. You are gonna get a little bit of excess. If you're doing it like me and you're using the tech salve or whatever, you're gonna have a little bit of excess come out the back, and that's why I do like to rack it a few times just to feel how smooth it's moving. Then just take a paper towel, wipe the back off. Right, you'll see a little bit come off the sides as well. It's always good to have a microfiber towel in your bag or in your kit, because when you're using it, you are gonna see a little bit of the smudges, but again, maintenance is very important, so you always wanna have that on you. And there you have it. Nice quick maintenance, guns racking smooth, perfect. That was my quick version of the maintenance. Now let's go into a deep clean for the War Daddy. So the reason that I chose my War Daddy build to do the deep clean maintenance on was because although this is one of my favorite pieces, I just don't use it as often as I should. And the reason being is I want to reserve its longevity. But you can see even the charging handle is a little loose, again, because I use Teflon tape over the permanentness of the Loctite. I want to make sure that this gun is always ready to go. So let's get ready for some deep clean maintenance. All right, so we're starting off the same way we did. Just making sure we're taking off the slide the right way. Okay, bam. You can see it is gonky. It is gunked up in here. So want to make sure we're wiping that down and cleaning it up the same way we did with the first one. You want to make sure you're looking for certain pieces that could possibly break. There have been clips of me and just me being on the field with other people.
It's getting caught on the
seeing
hammer.
them with their gun breaking down and them not knowing what's going on. So with this, you might be able to avoid some of those problems that you see other people having on the field. So now that we've done everything we could with the paper towel, let's go ahead, take one of our Q-tips, just try to get in as much as possible where you couldn't reach with the paper towel. So that pretty much ends the cleaning part of the lower. Again, I don't really open up the trigger group unless something breaks or a spring comes loose or something like that, just because I really don't see the need to. And to be quite honest, my guns have lasted, you know, and they perform very well. So I'm gonna continue that until something goes wrong, and then I'll update you guys if I do change, you know, my cleaning habits and maintenance habits as far as the lower. But for now, this is good. Let's move on to the slide setup. And you see, I use this technique a lot, and a lot of people I see have a hard time with it again, but as long as you make sure you put your thumb right at the top, you have that little divot right there. You're pulling that one down, clamping it, and then taking it out. Having these kinds of guide rods, people don't really notice, but sometimes they come apart, or sometimes they'll be twisted a little bit, they'll be sticking out of the front of your gun. You always wanna just make sure it's always screwed on all the way. If you do have the spring one, like I did with the Pink Nasty, you just wanna make sure everything is twisted down again. But you always wanna make sure that those are good, just because it does help you in the long run. You don't want it to shoot out randomly or anything like that. But now that we have that apart, you can just put that to the side. Again, I'm taking out the barrel setup. For this, what you really want to be looking at when you're maintaining this part of the gun, taking off the outer barrel, you want to make sure your screws that are in the hop-up unit are screwed down. What I've come across with different hop-up setups, not just this one, and this one is the Airsoft Masterpiece brass, sometimes the screws do come loose. Now, if you've seen me build my other pistols and my other hop-up setups, I do use Teflon tape for the little screws, and you can see here they're pretty flush. They haven't come out with anywhere as I've been using the gun. So for me, the Teflon tape works really well, but again, the screws are all there, nothing's coming loose, the hop-up's good, hop-up arm is clean. So this is good. We're gonna come back to it when we do start just wiping it down, but that's what you wanna be looking for as far as your hop-up setup. Another thing you wanna inspect when you're looking at the hop-up setup with the inner barrel is your bucking. You wanna look inside and just make sure that there's no warpage on the bucking itself. You also wanna make sure that your short strokes don't have any warpage, because again, if it does, it'll affect your gun in a way that you really shouldn't. I mean, personally, I haven't seen it just because I do keep my pistols well maintained, but I have seen it on the field where some people, their guns just stop working and then they take off the short stroke and one of them is literally obliterated. So whenever you're doing your maintenances, just make sure the short strokes are still intact. Because we're going into the deeper kind of maintenance, I'm going to be taking out my blowback unit as well as the blowback nozzle. To do that, I'm just gonna take off that back hammer pad and then take out the blowback unit. Putting the charging handle to the side. Now for the blowback unit. As you can see, once you take that off, it just slips right off. When removing the spring, you want to make sure that your return nozzle spring doesn't have any warpages or anything like that. You want to make sure it's still just your springy spring. This one looks pretty good. I think I could extend it a little bit, but again, you do see the dirt on it. And then I'm going to remove my nozzle. All right. So I have a very good seal with my nozzle. That's why I was having a little bit of trouble just now. What you want to be checking, for me, I believe it's cow, but it's an aluminum nozzle. I chose this because, again, I wanted this pistol to be my long-lasting pistol that if my Pink Nasty goes down, I can always just pick this up and run this. So the things that you want to check for is the spring that's holding the setup on the inside of the nozzle together. I've seen a lot of people open up their guns and that that screw is missing, and then they're just like, well, where is it? And then they take the nozzle out and everything just falls out. So just want to make sure that that's sitting flush. Again, it's a very tiny screw, but I was able to put just a slight amount of Teflon tape on it, and that's why I believe it hasn't even moved yet. So that's really good. Also, this part right here on the nozzle, this is what allows it to sit well with the bucking. And most people, when they open up their gun, that piece is gone. That means you need to replace your nozzle. It's not gonna shoot the right way, or you're gonna lose a lot of FPS just going onto the field. So those are the two things you wanna look for when you're taking apart your nozzle. I'm not gonna take the internals out just because I really don't feel the need to, but I definitely need to clean this thing. My hands are all gunked up, so let's get started on that. Now, another thing that I'd like to do is actually take off the piston, I think you call it, the piston right here, just to make sure that the O-ring on it is good, because that is what creates the air seal with your nozzle. So I do this just to make sure I have the best air seal as possible. All right, I'm just gonna take that off right there. Pretty clean. Just want to wipe it up a little bit, nothing too crazy. Now, I've heard that this is bad for your guns, but I'm gonna do it because I've been doing it since the beginning. What I do is, on the O-ring, I take a very, very, very small amount of Texab and I just lightly layer it around. If it's bad, and I don't know why it's bad, let me know in the comments below, because I really don't know why it's bad, but it's kept my guns running. So I'm gonna continue that practice until I'm told otherwise. And then taking off the piston also helps you, get into the really deep parts of the blowback unit. Obviously this one, I do have big fat fingers, so I'm going to use a Q-tip to get into the more deep parts of this unit. I tell you, most people don't take off that piston, but you really should. There's a lot of nasty stuff in there and you just want to make sure you clean it out. I don't have any Teflon tape on this piston screw. I don't really see the need to. It's never really come loose on me, but if I ever do see that problem, you guys already know what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use that Teflon. This whole thing is constantly moving within that blowback unit. So I'm gonna do the same technique I did before, where I put a little bit on my finger and just spread the love around. All right. So once that's nice and lightly lubed, I'm gonna put that in there. You can see it's got like a nice seal. It's not too loose, not too tight, just a nice, see, nice seal. I'm gonna take that spring, return nozzle spring it's called, place that in there. So I'm noticing I do have a little bit of space. I do have a 140 spring, but what I'm gonna do is just stretch this out a little bit just to see if I can use this a little bit longer. If not, and it does break down on me on the field, I do have spare parts to use. Okay. Okay, no, not happy with that. Oink, oink, oink. Okay, that is now sitting a little bit nicer and just more filling of the space on the, or in the blowback housing, which is allowing the nozzle to spring back. That was stupid of me to do. So now you can see it's taking up all the space within the blowback unit where the spring is supposed to sit. Because I stretched it out just a little bit before, there was a tiny bit of space where it can actually move back and forth, and I didn't want that, so I stretched the spring just to take up all of the area within there. So now that that's done, we can put it back in the slide. What I like to do is just have the blowback unit sitting on it, and then I just drop the slide down. Just make sure everything's all good. All right, pick it up by the nozzle and then slightly shift it into place. Now you have all that there, and you can see it's sitting flush on the top of the slide. And this is where I'm going to get the hammer pad and the hammer screw there. Just throw that back in there. If you have Teflon on screws, inspecting them when you're maintaining your gun is another good thing to do, just because if you need to reapply a little bit more Teflon or take off the old Teflon, you can do that. So that's always good. Now the hammer pad and the hammer screw is nice and flush. As you can see, it's not moving anywhere. All right, so then we'd put back the charging handle. So I'll put that right on the top. And honestly, for some reason, this screw always comes loose. So I'm not gonna reapply the Teflon. It already has a very generous amount on it, and because it's a small screw, I don't know how much more Teflon is gonna help. So I usually keep an Allen set on me on the field, just so that if it, gets a little loose while I'm playing, I can always just tighten it down. So since this part is already cleaned and I have the blowback unit in there, I'm now going to lube this up, just because if I put everything in there and then try to lube it up, most of those parts like the barrel setup and the guide rod plug are gonna get in the way. So now that I have this at this point, this is a perfect time to get a little Texab on there and lube up the rails. Just giving it a nice light layer. For the barrel setup, I'm not gonna open it up only because as I'm looking at it, I don't see any warpage within the hop up or the bucking. What I will do though is just give the entire barrel a nice clean. So in order to do that, just wanna take like a little slice of paper towel and do like a nice fold, however you can get it, right there, okay? And then you want to be able to put this inside of an unjamming rod. This is why these come with all these pistols. When you buy them stock, that is in there. So after you have that in there, I usually like to give it a nice little twist on both sides, just so that it doesn't go anywhere. And I like to go this way. And then as I'm going in, I twist. Want to make sure I don't go too far because again, I don't want to damage the bucking. Once I do that, take it out. And you can see there's not a lot on there, but it is, I think, in good practice to just do this while you're doing your deep clean maintenance. So. Amount. Everything looks good. Again, you want to do the rack test, just give it a few, make sure it's nice and smooth. After you take a nice paper towel and just clean up the excess like I told you that comes out the back area. Everything is looking clean. Thank you guys for watching this video on gun maintenance. If you guys had any questions or concerns, or if you'd like to see me do any other kind of maintenance on my guns, I'd really love to hear from you guys, so please let me know in the comments below. So I went up to my sponsor, Full Auto Airsoft, and I was just there to just check up on, John and Jess and see how everything was going with the store. And I ran into one of my biggest fans. His name is Joseph. Shout out to Joseph. He recognized me and he was just like, "You built the Scorching Sun, right?" And it was honestly just a great feeling. So I wanted to give him a special shout out. The experience meeting him just really helped me, boosted my energy to continue doing what I'm doing and just motivated me to keep making these videos and content for you guys. So Joseph, I know you think you had an awesome time in the store, but I can't even tell you how much I appreciated you being there. So special shout outs to you, man. And for any of your airsoft needs, please check out Full Auto Airsoft. If you're going to be purchasing anything online, please use my code ODB.airsoft it'll give you 5% off your purchase with reward points. This has been ODB, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.